It is the 27th day of April 2018, and welcome to Business Today. I'm your host, Dennis Igor. I'll be taking you through the biggest stories of the week. Of course, there are more stories, and on Business Today, we'll just get a few, like 12, and those ones which I think really trended. But before we go into that, I'll start with a story that is trending, and that is in the conservation sphere, whereby you can see there are a lot of massive there's a massive the people in the tourism industry are really concerned, are not really concerned, but they're really commemorating the death of Zakayo, the chimpanzee that died, that passed on at work. You know, Zakayo had been there for almost 54 years, and yesterday or the day before yesterday, the chimpanzee passed on, and very many people have been sending condolences. That's what I was looking for, sending condolences, and it is a major thing as far as conservation in Uganda is concerned. And UWEC, Uganda Wildlife Education Center, has organized a vigil today, surprisingly, and a burial tomorrow. You can imagine an animal dying, a chimpanzee dying, and it's according to the respect that we give to human beings. So tomorrow there is a vigil here. There is a vigil tonight. Then tomorrow there will be an official funeral that will be taking place at Uganda Wildlife Education Center. For those ones who have been there to work, I'm sure tomorrow there might be an exclusive entry. I don't think they'll be charging people who will be attending the funeral of Zakayo the chimpanzee. And as the business team, of course, we've been so much covering the tourism industry. We just have to say that Zakayo the chimp rests in peace. So that is one of them, and that is a very big story. I would say we'll be following up. I remember a few weeks ago there was also a rhino that passed on in Kenya, and the funeral was almost similar because it is the end of a species of white rhinos, and you can see how conservation is becoming very critical. Who would have ever thought that chimpanzee will be accorded all that respect? Of course, there are very many stories that are trending. Of course, one of the big stories that was in the region is the Tanzania charging bloggers about 4 million shillings Ugandan currency, 4 million Ugandan currency for bloggers to get licensed. Of course, there's a big story today morning. It's the North Korea. It is becoming, of course, Trump is planning to meet the North Korean president, but surprisingly has crossed to South Korea, and they're having a meeting. I think the meeting is ongoing right now. So basically, that's not all about business, but keeping you abreast with what is trending across the world. And coming back home, you know, there have been very many stories this week, and business has been very active. UCC and the pay TV, that story will be having it later. Insurance, but we'll be going straight to the oil and gas convention that ended yesterday. There are very many issues that were discussed. International speakers were there. Stakeholders from Uganda and across the globe were there to discuss on the prospects of oil and gas in Uganda. Let's have a look at the story that was done by Nancy.
With only 2 years left until 2020 for Uganda to commercially produce oil and gas, government continues to urge Ugandans to identify and utilize the available opportunities within the 20 billion worth expected investment oil and gas sector.
Sometimes when I talk to some of my friends or members of the private sector, they're saying, oh, oil and gas is above us. That's not our area. It's just because we have not sensitized people about the opportunities that are in oil and gas. Some like supplies of spare parts and equipment, transport services, land and maritime, banking, finance and insurance services, clearing and forwarding services, emergency response services.
Identify relevant opportunities and gaps. Let's network so that we can identify each other's strengths and see how we can team up together. And also for foreign investors to know that Uganda is very serious on local content.
These, among other issues, have been highlighted at the 4th Annual Oil and Gas Convention on the theme, Regional Collaboration for First Oil. Local, foreign investors and partners were reminded of the need to push for local content and collaboration. The oil and gas policy requires 40% indigenous participation and also focuses on addressing the skills gap before commercial production kicks off.
We've contributed to the creation of over 460 jobs, and this is through increased business opportunities for these companies.
Despite Uganda being on a clear track for extraction and selling of oil, critical issues such as environmental protection and safety compliance remain paramount.
Ladies and gentlemen,
The Albertine Graben, where Uganda has discovered her huge deposits of oil and gas, is also known by us for its high biodiversity, which is part of the backbone of Uganda's tourism industry. Therefore, care should be taken to ensure that the exploitation of oil resources is done without compromising the quality and quantity of other renewable natural resources.
Nancy Mekeka for UBC News.
Thank you for that story, Nancy. And we move on to another story, and this is about innovation in the real estate sector. For the last 2 weeks, we've been talking about innovation in this sector. And the question I'll toss to the viewer watching this program right now, is it possible? How possible is it to own a decent home in Uganda? There is a cross-section of the public who think it's possible. Of course, we tend to earn money differently, and those ones who probably have a salary of 30, 40, 50 million shillings. But the majority of Ugandans earn less than 1 million shillings a month. So is it possible to own a decent home? A decent home, you know what it means. That's probably a 3-bedroom house, self-contained, with everything in a very nice environment, you know, a very good compound. Is it possible? And looking at this situation, there, of course, that is what the Innovation Expo, the brainchild, Basson Mastella Expo was trying to tackle. In this event that took place at the Pearl of Africa Hotel, the MD NSSF, that is Richard Byarugaba, said it's possible. Of course, David Malay from Buganda Land Board was there, and I also say it looks like it's a bit impossible considering the fact that life is becoming very expensive. The cost of living is so high. Material for building is also very expensive. You know, now cement has almost reached 50,000 shillings a bag. What about acquisition of land? All those are the challenges. So is it possible? Let's have a look at the story. Is it possible for Ugandans of all walks of life to own a decent home? This was a contentious topic at the brainchild Basson Mastella Real Estate Innovation Expo at the Pearl of Africa Hotel in Kampala.
If all of us made that decision that we have a demand for houses, which we do, we have the supply of a mortgage, that would drive the developers who have scale and therefore can bring the unit cost down so that they bring product onto the market. The challenge is that developers, some who are courageous enough, are coming into the market, but they can't find a market because all of us are trying to do our own thing.
In Uganda, we are living in a situation of uncertainties. Somebody is on this job, but don't know where I will be next time. We don't have a minimum wage. So people in Uganda don't want to take those risks. That's why you see everybody saying when he's buying a house, I'm working for my children. People have become employees of their own children. Because
making real estate ownership a reality, practical innovations for Uganda was the theme of the expo.
If you choose to take the route of incremental development, find partners that are not going to let you down at the very first instance, which is the starting point, just acquiring the plot. Just be assured that what you acquire is really yours and you have full title to it.
Owning a decent home in Uganda is becoming less realistic. This is attributed to low income for majority of Uganda's working class, high costs of living and the cost of acquiring land. However, some say that's not a major deterrent and attribute it to poor saving culture.
Now there's no way you can mobilize sufficient resources for long-term housing financing without saving. We now need to re-engineer the way we've been developing our housing. We are looking at two things. Either we consider forced savings, to force Ugandans to save. Because we cannot continue lamenting that you see we don't have adequate savings.
The Real Estate Conference provided a platform for showcasing innovative and affordable solutions key in tackling the decent house challenge in Uganda. Dennis Igoa for UBC Business. I attended that expo and I found it very interesting, especially the discussion bit, whereby you had David Malay talking about parents becoming, they're like the kids are holding them hostage, because as you're working, coming to office every other day in the morning, you find that you're not working for yourself, you're working for the children. So every time you get some money, you're thinking about how your children will be. In the past, people used to have enough disposable income, but now we realize that the cost of living is becoming very expensive, and the challenge now is how possible is it for you to acquire land? Because now owning a plot of land like within Kampala, you're talking about more than probably 200 million shillings just within these small plots of land. So how possible is it? The youths are working. Most of the youths are now, some of them have got jobs, but you look at their income, it's becoming very, very impossible for them to own a home. So basically, I don't know which side to take, but I will tell you, or some of you are watching this program know how easy or how hard it is to own a home, but their innovations, that's what actually the expo was trying to tackle. We move on to another story, and this is about intellectual property. Who knows about intellectual property? It's a question, I'm tossing it to you who's watching Business Today this morning. Intellectual property is like you own or patent your work. How many people patent their works? Sometimes we don't patent our works. We make a very nice bag, put it out there in the market. You don't go to Uganda Registration Services Bureau to go and own the design. And what happens is that when someone else looks at it, duplicates your work and sells it, actually might sell it within the country, sells it across the globe. And when you, sometimes you say, you go maybe now trying to seek for redress, you want to find out, hello, is this guy looks like he has copied my works. But on going to URSB, you find the person who copied, you're the first person to come up with this design. Someone else has taken it and now owns it. And this is what the discussion was taking place yesterday. Uganda joined the rest of the world to mark the World International Property, World Intellectual Property Day, and a very, very significant occasion. And this year, they're looking into issues of empowering women as far as getting their patent. Let's have a look at this story that was done by Charlotte Amuge.
Uganda has joined the rest of the world to mark the World Intellectual Property Day. Celebrated every 26th of April, the event seeks to highlight the importance of innovators from all fields of life to patent their works.
When you innovate, when you create, when you come up with a song, when you write your book, register it with us. Because government will know and plan for you once you're registered with us. But some people just develop products and processes and services and go into commercialization without protection. So you're not on the government database. At the same time, you will not be celebrated, you will not be known. But even by the time you come to protect, maybe somebody has already taken away your technology.
Marked under the theme, Powering Change, Women in Innovation and Creativity, women were encouraged to register their works and ensure that those rights are protected.
I think we have a lot of sensitization, so with time people are actually learning that it's important to come and protect your idea so that eventually you can earn out of it. And when you commercialize, because you license people to use it, they also buy it off you. So it's business, IP is business.
According to the World Intellectual Property Organization Handbook, policy, law and use, and all intellectual property systems need to be underpinned by a strong judicial system for dealing with both civil cases and criminal offenses. However, most of the innovators in Uganda have not endeavored to patent their innovations.
We have women that are weaving baskets, and baskets are designs, cultural designs, and to promote our cultural diversity. We have women that are doing bags. We have Ori Bags, Innovations Limited, that has come up with very good shapes of bottles.
The IP Summit and commemoration organized by Uganda Registration Services Bureau was geared at creating an opportunity to strengthen skills and competences of women through sharing ideas, leadership and marketing skills. Charlotte Amuge for UBC Business.
Yeah, Business Today is the program you're watching. I'm your host, Dennis Igor. That was a story about World International Intellectual Property Day. And you've heard from the interviews we had how important it is to own, to patent your works. If you don't patent your works, it's really very dangerous because you might end up losing a lot of money. And from what I heard from Uganda Registration Services Bureau, it's not all that expensive. I'm sure someone might be watching this program and wondering how much is it to patent your work or to register your work. It is, I'm sure there must be a website, and nowadays that almost everything has gone online. What you can simply do, get your smartphone, get off WhatsApp probably, and then try and find the URSB on your site and find out how possible, how affordable, how cheap is it, or how expensive is it to register your works, which is very important because all over the world, I think artists do that quite often. Is artists, innovators, and I'm so sure Uganda has very many innovators, and very many innovators are watching this program this morning. We move on to another new development in the banking sector, and this is agency banking. Agency banking is now official, and the commercial banks, the 24, 25 commercial banks are now ready to conduct business, conduct business, and that is how it is. The function took place this week, a few days ago actually, I think the day before yesterday, and it has been given a go-ahead by Bank of Uganda. And I think the bankers, the commercial banks especially, and even the MDIs, that is microfinance development, the micro institutions are also getting on board, and I'm so sure they're very excited. This agency banking is very critical. It has, of course, made a very serious headway in a country like Kenya, and Uganda has also adopted it. And what we're expecting is that it will really help in boosting financial inclusion. Let's have a look at this story. The Uganda Bankers Association has unveiled the shared agent banking systems that enables an extension of banking services outside the conventional bank branches.
And what the shared platform will then do is to enable connectivity with all the member banks so that agents across the country can serve customers of any member bank. And through that, through the numerous outlets, then we can reach out the bigger part of the population, have them, subscribe to services, extend services to the deepest levels.
The platform, which has been so successful in the neighboring Kenya, was approved by the Central Bank of Uganda on the 28th of December 2017 for members of UBA to conduct agent banking business.
The launch of the agent banking shared platform is a key milestone in our drive for financial inclusion, and is part of the various initiatives being implemented by government. So we want to express our appreciation.
According to various financial sector stakeholders, the initiative will be critical in fostering financial inclusion in Uganda.
It's a lot of hard work that has been put in this to bring it today to fruition and completion and launching it for our customers.
Among the things we are requested to do is provide a multi-channel enabled platform. That means it needs to be inclusive for everybody.
It is estimated that less than a third of Uganda's population, about 8 million people, have accounts in commercial banks.
We also open to work with, and as we've been doing, we've been working with partners like FSTU. We continue to do this because today is the launch, but there's a lot of work that is coming ahead of us where we need to really grow the uptake of financial services to the unbanked, the underbanked, and even the banked.
The Minister for Finance Planning and Economic Development, Matia Kasaija, emphasized that extension of banking services and bringing on board the proportion of Uganda's population to the formal banking system is the ultimate objective of agency banking. Dennis Igoa for UBC Business. Like I said at the beginning of this program, is that it has been a very active week as far as business is concerned, and definitely there are a lot of activities and stories that are taking place today. As you're aware, the president has also been up country and is really. I saw him in the farm, in one of the farms, planting pineapples, and I thought it was a very good idea. And I'm sure Uganda is an agrarian country, and we really have to make use of our niche. We don't need to start crying like those ones now. Whenever it rains, you hear some people complain complaining, oh, this rain is very bad. But we are an agrarian country. Why don't we make use of this rain? We have gardens behind our houses. Why don't we make use of those gardens? Plant some food rather than going to Kalewe market and start crying that tomatoes are very expensive, onions are very expensive. You can do this. You can grow them behind your garden. You can actually irrigate them, and you will save a lot of money. We'll be moving on to another story, and this is almost related to the one that has just gone, that has just ended, and this is about insurance. Uganda Bankers, no, sorry, UBA and United Bank of Africa, and that is almost similar to Uganda Bankers Association, so I was getting lost there. But I would say United Bank of Africa has been given a license by Insurance Regulatory Authority to conduct, to offer insurance products, like the bank assurance. They have been licensed by IRA to be agents also. In this case, when you go to this bank, clients or someone else, clients especially, you can buy an insurance product. This is also has almost the same goal as agency banking, is that the insurance penetration is now in the spotlight. Remember, our country have been stagnating at about 0.6%. We were there for quite some time. Penetration 0.6%. Then we moved to 0.85%. Then we dropped to, I think, 0.70%. That's where I think we are currently. But by licensing these companies, licensing banks to sell insurance products, there is a very high expectation that will help in boosting penetration. Let's have a look at this story of UBA and IRA.
The introduction of the bank assurance product within the mainstream banking sector is expected to widen the range of products offered by commercial banks to their customers.
According to the license we have issued, they are going to be free to deal with Sanlam Life Insurance Company. They're also going to deal with Jubilee Life and Jubilee General. They're also going to deal with ICEA Life and ICEA General, and UAP Old Mutual, and then NIC General. So we hope that our relationship with UBA is going to go a long way to increase the penetration level and also to increase access to insurance.
In today's fast-moving world, insurance cannot be underestimated given its importance. However, lack of awareness has affected the penetration of insurance products across the country.
We look at insurance as an additional solution or service to our clients. And with the vast products or services currently offering, we're giving an addition to them to be able to provide insurance on their part. We have quite a large customer base, the majority of which are currently not insured or are not receiving the insurance services, not because they didn't want them, but largely because they didn't know about them and their proximity to the insurance service providers.
Commercial banks like UBA, with a footprint across the country, are expected to play a critical role in enhancing the penetration. Insurance products in Uganda include motor, education plans, life, non-life and Cayman insurance, among others. Charlotte Amuge for UBC Business.
There was a slight mistake on the tag of bank assurance, because I'm sure, all right, it's a BANCASSURANCE, but I'm sure it's close to that. The pronunciation is the same. We'll be moving on to what I would say excites me most. Definitely, I've been covering business, but most of you know that I love tourism so much. I tend to travel almost every other weekend. And this time around, I had an opportunity to travel with the Japanese embassy to Bwindi Impenetrable National Park for the mountain gorilla trekking exercise. Someone told me, Dennis, don't just call it gorilla trekking, because it's mountain gorilla trekking. Trekking, actually it's not trekking, it's trekking. It was exciting, and just know that the Japanese are with us in the goal of marketing destination Uganda. You can imagine a foreign country, I would say, putting up efforts, investing resources to market a different country or a sector in a different country, which I found it very, very interesting for me, because quite often we tend to talk ill about our countries, but you can imagine other countries talking positive about us. Let's have a look at this story about Bwindi Impenetrable National Park. Uganda has over the years vigorously marketed the gorillas as the main tourism product. Hosting more than half of the world's mountain gorilla population, Uganda has a niche over its competitors Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of Congo. Bwindi Impenetrable and Mugahinga National Parks, located in western Uganda, are where these shy and gentle apes reside in the wild. For decades, most of the tourists interested in trekking gorillas have come from America and Europe. However, the trend is changing, with the number of tourists from Asia steadily rising. Japanese, Chinese and Indian tourists top the list.
Most Japanese tourists who are coming to Uganda that we are handling, gorilla tracking is number one. Number two is bird watching, and specifically every Japanese that comes here will want to see a shoebill stock. And it's an opportunity for Uganda because we are a very, very good birding destination. You can see the shoebills in many different parts of Uganda. Markshon Falls, Queen Elizabeth National Park, Mavamba, and around Lake Victoria.
The Japanese embassy in Uganda is actively involved in marketing Destination Uganda to its citizens, says His Excellency Kazuaki Kamida.
I'm supporting Uganda's tourism development, especially in the Japanese market, so that I would like to have opportunities to talk to potential Japanese tourists and industry people.
The marketing efforts are so far fruitful.
First, I thought gorilla trekking, not tracking. That's very nice with guide. And 74-year-old lady with some illness, but I succeed. I get it.
With more strategic partnerships and focused marketing, Uganda's tourism industry will effectively tap into the Japanese market.
Yes, I had a little bit less than 1 hour trekking, but that was very refreshing. So this is a great attraction even for Japanese citizens to come to experience.
Bwindi is regarded as one of the richest ecosystems in Africa, and its inhabitants, the mountain gorillas, attract thousands of tourists annually. A gorilla trekking permit costs about 2.1 million shillings for foreigner and 250,000 shillings for locals. Dennis Igoa for UBC News. I'm still smiling. The lady, the 74-year lady, was very excited. We call them Jaja. She was very excited that she managed to trek for almost an hour or two to get to the Habinyanja group of gorillas. It's a habituated group. I think it was very, very exciting. I loved the experience, and I think it's an experience for a lifetime for most of people out there. Tourists, especially from Europe, the US, spend a lot of money just to come and have some trek these animals, see them in the wild. And as Ugandans, most of us have never reached Bwindi, and definitely we always complain of the distance, which I think it's not very far. We tend to spend a lot of money in the city here, in wedding meetings, in parties, housewarming parties and stuff. I think you can save a little money and go and see these animals. It's exciting. And the other thing is that the last clip where someone is being carried, people were asking me, Dennis, what was it about? Was that man sick? No, he wasn't sick, but the locals there offer some service, and you know what the service is? Carrying those people who are sick or ill up to the location where the gorillas are and back to where the cars are parked. It's a service because some people want to see these animals and they are 80 years old. The jungle is very thick and very many of them cannot walk. And now it's raining, it's very, very slippery. So we move on to another story, and it's also related to tourism, and this is it. I had a very nice interaction with Sam Mugisha, a tour operator who speaks Japanese and has managed to reap big from the Japanese language. Let's have a look at this piece.
はじめまして。私の名前はサムエル・ムギシャです。
Meet Sam Mugisha, a Ugandan tour operator with a niche in the Japanese language. Mugisha, the proprietor of Big Tours, saw a golden opportunity in learning Japanese more than a decade ago, and his ambitions inspired him to travel and spend over a year in Japan learning the basics in the Japanese language.
Pronunciation of most of the words is much closer to our words in Bantu languages. I'll give you like an example. In Uganda, we have a place called Jinja. The same pronunciation of Jinja means a temple in Japan. My name is Mugisha. In Japan, they have some drink made of something like sorghum called Mugicha. So Mugisha and Mugisha, very close. So I would listen and practice.
Mugisha, who hails from Kanungo district in western Uganda, has never looked back since then, and his eloquence in Japanese language has totally transformed his life. Back in Japan, Mugisha had to struggle to learn the language. He had actually not expected to have a difficult time learning it.
Learning Japanese is really complicated because Japanese as a language has got 3 characters. You start with the simplest ones called hiragana. After you have learned those ones, now a second level of katakana comes, and the third level of kanji, which is like the Chinese characters, comes in. So it is really very complicated because it has so many characters.
Currently, Mugisha owns a successful tour company, and his eloquence in Japanese guarantees him clients. This is due to the fact that there is hardly any tour guide or tour operator in Uganda who is fluent in the language.
The big tours as a company that I own is probably 90% handling Japanese clients. So it is a direct benefit of my being able to speak Japanese that my company is doing well.
Mugisha encourages Ugandans, especially the youth, to strive and learn a few foreign languages.
As the number of Japanese tourists continue to come to Uganda, not only Japanese tourists but also like businessmen and women who are coming to Japan, I think there is more need for more Ugandan speaking Japanese.
As the country continues to attract more foreign visitors and investors, it is imperative for locals to learn some of these widely used foreign dialects such as French, Chinese and Japanese in order to earn an extra buck from foreign tourists. Dennis Igor for UBC News. Yeah, sure. We had a very good time with Sam there. I asked him a question: if I learn Japanese and I'm fluent with it, will he give me a job? And he said, Dennis, you are guaranteed of having a job. And I think that's a very inspirational story for very many people out there. We tend to underestimate the value of languages. But I think if we can speak Chinese, we can speak a little bit of French, we can speak Japanese, then you can see there are very many opportunities out there. Because sometimes people have to be paid to come to Uganda for a conference just to translate. Just imagine if we had so many Ugandans speaking some of these languages. I'm telling you, we'll be making a lot of money. We'll be going into a commercial break, and when we come back from the commercial break, we'll be having an interview, and this is about the Agribusiness Development Center. Farmer-based organizations that have FBOs that have potential to contribute to the agricultural value chain finally have a chance at improving their operations and ultimately become bankable. The organizations that currently lack technical or structural capacity to operate in a sustainable way have started benefiting from the technical support from the Agribusiness Development Center that is in Kampala. So we'll be going into a short commercial break, and when we come back, then we'll be having this 13 minutes interview with Agribusiness Development Center.
What are we as ADC, or what do we want to do as ADC through the period of existence? So ADC basically was, like I said, was set up to support, build the capacity of farmers in 3 core areas. As we know, first facts about agriculture in Uganda is a number of farmers, or a number of farmer-based organizations work or are present in Uganda, or the sector basically employs about, I would say, 80% of our workforce as a country, and it contributes a lot in terms of the GDP, in terms of our exports, in terms of, I would even say, imports. Yeah, but then at the end of the day, the sector is, I would say, suffocating. Suffocating because the last person at the value chain, or the agri value chain, which is the producer or the farmer, is not being supported as it's supposed to be. So Agribusiness Development Center is basically supposed to work with these small entities and build on their capacities.
So talking about supposed to work with the farmers, are you already on ground working with the farmers?
Definitely. ADC already started operations last year. So what we've done up to now is basically identify farmer-based organizations. We have a tool that we use for scoring them to check on their eligibility for the program. So we score them, we assess them, we do a presentation to one of our committees to vet their eligibility, and then finally we take them on. So our center focus as ADC, or Agribusiness Development Center, is basically 3 core areas. We intend to build the capacity of the different farmer-based organizations in governance and leadership, in financial literacy, and then in marketing. Those are the 3 core areas, and if you relate to the agri sector in Uganda, you'll find that those are the 3 areas that are really suffocating. Many farmer-based organizations are not functioning or are not working well because, one, their structures are really weak, or there's a gap in leadership. So because of that, ADC thinks that coming on board and then working with these people, building their capacity towards having them strengthen their tools, their work tools and their skills towards governing the different organizations present, can be a plus for the different farmer-based organizations. In terms of finance, a number of financial institutions are finding it hard working with these farmers. Because the farmers are not financially disciplined, the farmers don't know how to relate financially, the farmers don't have a clear understanding of how to access and how to manage finance that is available to them. So what ADC is going to try to do is bridge the gap in terms of sharing information, in terms of supporting these farmer-based organizations understand what are the basic dynamics of financial management. What are some of the principles that an organization needs to be aware of in terms of financial management? What is saving, for example? What is a loan? How do you access a loan? What is a good loan and what is a bad loan? You know, what are some of the key pointers that guide you in building relationships with financial institutions? So we hope through the period with the farmer-based organizations, we shall be able to do that, to achieve that. And then finally, of course, you know that one of the biggest gaps in the sector is marketing. We do a lot of production, but at the end of the day, the farmer is still suffering because he doesn't have sufficient information to the different market points. And that is one of the biggest challenges in Uganda at large in the agri sector. Now, ADC is going to try and build the capacity. We are not going to, as ADC, look for markets for these people, but we are going to try and build their capacity towards giving them sufficient tools that they can use to foster better market relations.
Talking about farming or agriculture, Uganda is a very big country. So basically, can you tell us a bit about the footprint of ADC? Which areas do you cover? And probably in this value chain, which type of crops are you targeting?
We are basically everywhere, I would say. We are basically in all the regions in Uganda. We're in the north, we're in the east, we're in central, and we are in the west. In terms of the value chains of focus, I would say we are not really centered around key value chains, but our start point, of course, at the end of the day is the DFCU value chains of focus, which is coffee, cotton, cocoa, that is also coming on board. We have people who are doing vanilla, then we have people in dairy, we have people in poultry, then we have people in grains, and most importantly, we also have people that are actually doing vegetable. A big number of the farmer-based organizations are doing vegetable oilseeds, that is simsim, soya, and sunflower. Yeah, I think those are basically some of the key value chains that we are currently engaged in. But of course, there's also another component that we are also working with, and that is a company that is doing financing or finance services for members or for groups, so that the circles. So they are also part of the ADC farmer-based organizations that are currently on board or that we are currently working with.
Someone will want to know about the current project that you're running, and maybe then how long are you going to be running it? Because you've talked about like it does have a fees. I don't know if it has a fees or not, but you can give me an insight about that.
Okay, I think for the farmers, basically it's good for them to know that, you know, this project is there for them, most importantly, and it's of course at no cost. The only cost basically for the project is the fact that we have to score before you're entered or before you're recruited into the program. So we have a tool that is called the Rabobank Cooperative Assessment Score Tool. We kind of call it RACOS in short. And that tool has key components that the different farmer-based organizations are assessed upon. So we focus on the farmer business analysis, we focus on governance and leadership, we focus on potential, we focus on technical production, technical information and then production information, we focus on financial literacy, we focus on marketing. So between 1 to 5, those are the score ranges for each of the various questions that we ask under each section. Yeah. So it's basically our start point as ADC. So we introduce the program to these people and then we do an assessment. After the assessment, what ADC does is we have a steering committee that we present cases to. So the steering committee is basically supposed to listen, and then they help in deciding which of the different groups that were assessed qualify for the program. So at the end of it all, the moment we pick out those groups after presenting them and making strong cases about them, then we give them back information and tell them, you're going to be part of the program or not part of the program.
Maybe on the issue of assessment, maybe you can give us you can tell us about the criteria of assessment. How rigorous is it? Because I'm so sure that people out there, especially the farmer community, are very much interested in this.
The assessments are, I would say, are rigorous, but they are not so stringent. Rigorous can mean we spend a lot of time with them just to help understand where they are, so that when in case they are taken on board, we already have that rapport going on. So, but then we don't really, it's not cast on stone that because you don't meet A, B, C, D, you're basically thrown out. No, we try to ask the basic, simple questions that relate to the program that we are doing as Agribusiness Development Center. So, for example, in terms of marketing, because marketing is one of the core areas we want to strengthen for the farmer-based organizations that we shall be working with, we basically ask, do they have contracts? Do they have a marketing plan? If they have a marketing plan, is it implementable? How do they do market sourcing? Do they do the ad hoc system where you just wake up in the morning and then go and look for market? Or do you pre-plan some of these items like, let me already have the market committee day in, day out do their job, because the market committee is supposed to do market sourcing to help, when we do production and we've harvested and we've stocked and we've piled, we've bulked our items, we know where we are taking our items. Yeah. So those are some of the things that we ask. Then for finances, we want to ask questions that relate to, have you accessed a loan? Did you manage to pay a loan in time? Do you have accounts? Do the members of the cooperative have accounts? Do they use these accounts? Do you have, as a farmer-based organization, do you have some manuals, financial manuals that guide in terms of, accountability, in terms of transparency and things like that, what do you do in terms of, the finance? So we basically ask all those questions. The governance questions are also related to governance. So how is the structure in the cooperative? What are the roles and responsibilities? Does each and every individual in the cooperative understand their roles and responsibilities? And then are they playing their roles and responsibilities as needed? So these are basically the different things that we ask. And then of course, the most and very important thing that we do is we try to also do self-assessments. That is, take a little bit of observations. When were you established? What has been your growth rate? What has changed through the period? How many partners have you worked with? Because we know in Uganda here there's some organizations that are basically, I would say, aid-oriented. You know, so you're not self-motivated, but you're basically looking out for different opportunities. And that's the biggest challenge with many of these farmers. So the moment they hear there's an opportunity, they want to tap into the opportunity, but they don't look back at the resources that they have as individuals. We're doing a number of things that are aligned and specific to the farmer organizations. And one of them, or one of the ones that we are really trying to push, is the e-learning platform. Because we know that our structuring might be limited, but we have other avenues that we want to use to reach out to these farmers. So we have the e-learning platform, which is almost going to be launched. And that e-learning platform is basically going to do what we do in the physical. So it's basically transferring the physical knowledge into the virtual, where these farmers can access. So we have about 4 modules that we train these farmers on. One is the development and establishments, the history and development of cooperatives. Then the second is governance and leadership. The third module that we have is financial literacy. The fourth module that we have is marketing. So we are doing this physically, that is, we go to the field and then we train these farmers. Then we're also going to translate that to the e-learning platform. Yeah, so that those that we cannot reach out to, but can go online and then, you know, need to get this information, can access it using the e-platform. And then of course we have the Simu Plus, which is also another item which is coming through. And the Simu Plus is going to help us reach out to massive numbers of farmers that we can't really reach out to. Yeah. So advice to the farmers is take the rainy season serious. Let's try to till our land. Let's try to follow instructions, and let's try to, as much as possible, do a little bit of value addition right from input. Let's not focus on using our old traditional inputs. Let us try to reach out, go to these accredited centers because they exist, and then let us buy genuine inputs that we put, and then at the end of the day we have a return on our investment as farmers.
Sure.
Yes.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Dennis.
God.
Thank you very much.
All right. It was a pleasure.
It was a pleasure too.
Yeah, that was an insight into agribusiness development in Uganda with Sam Obuko from Agribusiness Development Center based here in Kampala. The project, a 5-year project, is supported supported by DFCU Bank and Rabobank of the Netherlands. And the next 5 years, they're going to spend about $2.8 million in ensuring that our farmers are active and they do farming as a business. Looking at the clock right in front of me, I think I have a very few minutes, and for that I'm going to be calling for a top bite, and this is Sam Mabala, a commissioner at the Ministry of Lands, and he's talking about how possible is it to own a decent home. And the fact is, I think he rubbed some people. When he was making this statement at the expo, some people were thinking, is it serious? Why should government forcefully or force us to save money? And do they know how much money we earn anyway? Let's look at this.
Many of us believe that maybe we cannot save because we do not earn enough. And so saving is not part of our financial planning. Now, there's no way you can mobilize sufficient resources for long-term housing financing without saving. We now need to re-engineer the way we've been developing our housing. Instead of getting the money, as Richard said, that you get that money, you lock it up at a development site for a period of 7 to 10 years. Let's get that money, put it in a savings sort of vehicle. whether it is a SACCO, whether it's a microfinance, whether it's an investment club, whether it is the housing finance bank, whatever it is. But let each one of us be committed to long-term saving. I was just talking to one of the colleagues from housing finance that we are looking at two things. Either we consider forced savings, to force Ugandans to save. Because we cannot continue lamenting that you see we don't have adequate savings. The few people who are saving with Richard, they are very, very few. I don't know what percentage it is. But if we can have all those who are in active employment, all those who are in the informal sector, even if they were saving 20,000 per month per person, there would be sufficient long-term financing in this country, and we could beef up the pension funds in National Social Security Fund. And we wouldn't even worry about the term or the interest rate.
Yeah, that is Samuel Mabala. He's the Commissioner, Minister of Lands and Urban Development. And I think what he was saying is that they are thinking at the ministry, I think, or the government, of trying to find a way of ensuring that all of us save some money, because we are very good at lamenting, and the most common word is like government ituyambe, government please help us. For how long is government going to be helping us? Definitely. And he said, I think it's very practical. I've interacted with some of these entrepreneurs, very successful, and they will tell you that they are where they are today because they really saved a lot of money that time, and they saved money, invested and reinvested, and that is it, and they are successful. I think this topic is really I wouldn't say controversial, but I think it's something that we can really delve into widely in another session. I'll be coming into to the end of the program today, Business Today. I've been your host, Dennis Igoa. It's Friday, and you know they call Friday, but in Swahili you can put a F-U-R-A-H-I, and it says a day to be happy. Please, as you become very happy out there, I know most of you will step out of office early enough to go maybe mingle with some friends. Some of you are traveling up country, and definitely schools have closed. That's what I've been told, and students are coming home. If you're planning to go and get your kid and bring him back home, please drive safely, you know. And these kids, when they come home, don't let them be on TV, watch cartoons for the whole day, or put them in something active. If you have a farm, let them know how to plant maybe sukuma wiki or Irish potatoes or onions. Let them be active, because definitely if we let them be idle, the next time you'll be there complaining that your kid doesn't know what to do. Thank you for being part of the program, Business Today. And on Monday, we shall be here and we'll be having more content. And there's something special from the Equator, which will be Sounds of Business. Thank you. Business Today has been the program.